Welcome to Conversations from St. Norbert College, a program that invites you into discussions taking place in your community on today's local and global issues. Now, your host for Conversations from St. Norbert College, the Dean and Academic Vice President of the college, Michael Marsden.
Good evening. My name is Michael Marsden, and I'm your host for this edition of Conversations from St. Norbert College. Our very special guest this evening is Ms. Julie Ewart, Senior Public Affairs Specialist for the Office of Communications and Outreach, Region 5, for the United States Department of Education. Our topic this evening is the quality of our country's teacher education programs. Julie, welcome to our program. We're really very pleased to have you with us.
I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks.
And good that you could spend some time on campus while you're here as well.
It's a beautiful campus.
Well, thank you. Much appreciated. Now, and I know you've probably been talking about this for maybe months, but in Secretary of Education Duncan's recent speeches on teacher education, he's been pretty critical of, he uses the term actually, many if not most of our teacher education programs because he feels that they need a major overhaul. I mean, that's his basic argument, I think. What's his reasoning on this? I mean, how does he come to that conclusion?
Well, there's two main reasons. The first is research. There's a body of research, the most recent being a report called the Lerner Report.
I have a copy of that. Yes.
Yeah. Spearheaded by Arthur Levine, who was a former president of the Teachers College at Columbia. And it basically looked at a lot of colleges of education throughout the country and found a lot of issues, a lack of material showing what was working, what wasn't working.
So data.
A lack of data. And really, it was it linked in with what the Secretary himself has seen before he was the Secretary of Education.
We might remind the audience what he did before he became Secretary of Education.
Right. He was the CEO of Chicago Public Schools for 7 years before he became the Secretary of Education. And he personally saw a tremendous problem with retaining new teachers. And while that may not all be because of the education that they received, he felt that was certainly a part of it, that they were lacking hands-on training in the classroom, as well as the skills to use data to actually help progress individual students' progress in the classroom. So those were two main key areas that he saw that were actually identified in the report as well. In addition to that, he has had discussions with superintendents throughout the country, and that's a persistent problem that comes up, is new teachers and their ability to do well in the classroom and the issue of teacher retention.
Yeah, that's very big. In fact, I think, now my statistics may be not quite current, but the last time I checked, I think I heard that about a third of all those who are certified never actually enter the classroom. And of those who do, 50% don't stay more than 5 years. Those are stats that might be a little old, but they seem to be pretty dramatic nonetheless.
I don't have those right in front of me, but if you're not exactly right, you're very close. I know that's about right.
So it's not so much we have a
problem.
Teacher shortage, we have a teacher retention problem.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. But because of a teacher retention problem, particularly in areas where it is difficult to attract teachers.
That'd be rural and urban.
Rural and urban are very difficult areas. There are also shortages of people in math, science, engineering, and technology, the STEM subjects. Special ed, there are shortages in many areas, as well as the teaching of critical foreign languages.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
He also has said in a recent speech, I think this is the one he gave at Columbia, that, and this is a quote, "Education is a civil rights issue of our generation." What does he mean by that? That's a pretty bold statement.
It is a bold statement, and it's one that he said frequently, and the president has said quite frequently as well. And what he means by that is something that it reiterates in something that Horace Mann said many years ago, that education is the great equalizer. And that education has really, because we are not providing students throughout the country with equal educations, we still have a tremendous achievement gap in this country between disadvantaged students and middle class, upper class students.
So not everybody's getting the education they deserve.
Exactly. And so this is a civil rights issue of our generation, because the jobs that were once there for students who don't have diplomas, they're not there. Right. Even those who just have high school diplomas, their options are very, very limited. Sure. The vast majority of people will need some college in order to have successful careers.
Okay. Now, since Secretary Duncan finds a lot of faults with our current teacher education programs across the country, and he's talking about some 1,400 plus college and university programs, what are some of the characteristics of what he would consider to be a successful program? I mean, he finds fault, then what's the corrective?
He also mentioned in that same speech that there are many schools that have excellent programs. Yes, the general tenors we need to change, but at the same time, he has seen some very promising things going on as well. He thinks it is imperative that students have lots of time in classrooms throughout their years in college, so that they can practice the skills that they are learning in theory. Okay. Practice them in the classroom under supervision, and get accustomed to the classroom, get accustomed to the actual discipline issues that come up, the social issues that are going on, the real things that go on in classrooms every day that you can't really teach in theory. You have to be able to see there and have that hands-on experience. Manipulating data is also a necessity for
in the sense
today.
of using it to improve the classroom.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. And that is another area where he thinks many colleges need to improve in terms of teaching students how they can use that data to improve, rather than just having them take the test. And
now, what according to the secretary, and I realize you're not the secretary, but in a sense you're sort of representing his positions. What would be some of the incentives that the secretary sees for a system to change? What's going to motivate them? Are there stimulus funds that are going to be accessible if they do a better job, or what's going to motivate college and university programs to change?
Well, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act has been a historic opportunity for education. About $115 billion of Recovery Act funds were devoted to education, and that's just unheard of. More federal money than we've ever had before. And the Secretary is using those funds to progress reforms. One way that he is doing it is through the Race to the Top program, and that is a competitive grant program that will provide states who are showing good progress towards 4 key reforms. It will give them additional funding to
Is
improve
one of those
their
reforms
systems.
the preparation of teachers?
It is teacher quality.
Teacher
yes.
quality. Okay.
Teacher quality, and a big part of that is getting high quality teachers to the schools that need them the most, and that feeds back into what we were talking about before, the areas where there are huge
urban
needs.
and rural.
Exactly.
Special areas.
Exactly. The other 3 reforms go hand in hand. One of them is developing and maintaining longitudinal data systems that can track students from preschool through higher education, so that their teachers, their parents, the students themselves can see where they were, where they need to be, and where they're at now, and have the right tools provided to them so that they can succeed. Another one is providing resources to chronically underperforming schools so that they can get out of that terrible cycle and actually help their students to start achieving and succeeding. And the last one is creating and maintaining college and career-ready standards and assessments, so that we have standards that ensure that students are really learning the things that they need to know.
So that's the assessment piece.
Exactly. Exactly. So all of these go hand in hand. But
what's the timetable? What timetable does the Secretary have in mind?
Well, with Race to the Top in particular, the competition on that, the applications are going in now.
Okay.
That's going to be awarded in 2 rounds in 2010. In terms of a timeline, though, the President has set a very ambitious goal. By the year
He generally does.
Yes, he does. By the year 2020, he wants the U.S. to have the highest number of college graduates of any country in the world. And that is a very ambitious goal. But if you want to talk about timelines, the money's coming now, but of course the results are something that we will see for years to come. But that's the ultimate goal, is to have more students prepared to be able to succeed in life and to ensure our nation's economic prosperity as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, embedded within the Secretary's plan, though, are alternative teacher education prep programs. In other words, I just can list a couple of them. The New Teacher Project, Troops to Teacher Program, Teach for America. These are some of the programs he mentions. Are there other alternative preparatory programs that he's thinking about or that his staff is thinking about promoting?
Not to my knowledge, but the Secretary is basically for programs that work. He thinks...
Well, everybody would be for that.
Well, yes.
Yeah. I don't know anybody who's for a program that doesn't work, but...
True, but I guess my point is that he's not necessarily for specifically only this type or that type or this program.
So he's
if
going
a
to look at a lot of
program
alternative
shows
programs.
that it's got a good track record, or that it's based on something that has a good track record, he'll be for it. Chances are he'll be positive about it. However, I would like to say with alternative certification versus the traditional, in that Columbia speech, he noted that the number of people certified through the traditional program is much, much, much more than what goes through the alternative process.
Absolutely.
And he sees that as being a very good thing, because when students go through, when 18, 19-year-olds are going through a 4-year university, we're not just looking at what they're learning through the College of Education. They're getting to take astronomy classes and math classes and everything else at a 4-year college, and have access to the resources, to the professors, to all the wonderful things that come with that well-rounded, rich curriculum.
Sure. I was just wondering, has any study been done on some of the alternative certification programs in terms of whether those teachers stay in the profession longer or maybe for the rest of their career? In other words, people who have been out in the business world decide to go back and be certified as a teacher. Do they stay longer? Are they retained at a higher level? Or maybe we don't have
I'd have to get back to you on that one. I'm actually not sure.
I was just wondering about that.
No, that's a very good question.
It would seem to make sense that they would be retained at a higher rate, but
I would have to get back to you on that one. Okay. For 18-year, 19-year-olds, a lot of times those 4-year programs are going to make the most sense.
Sure.
For people who are midlife, are looking at changing careers, have a great background to be a teacher, those alternative programs may be very, very attractive, may make a whole lot of sense, because these may not be people that need or want to go into.
But you'll never see them as really competing with the traditional programs, because, again, for the typical 18 or 19-year-old entering into this whole process, the traditional college or university program is going to fit their needs better.
Most of the time, that's going to be true. We see them as working hand in hand, not as two entities that are
not in
competition.
Competition.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Complementary.
The goal is the same.
Oh, good,
yeah.
Good. I want to remind our viewers that you're watching Conversations from St. Norbert College. Our very special guest this evening is Ms. Julie Ewart, Senior Public Affairs Specialist for the Office of Communications and Outreach, Region 5 for the U.S. Department of Education. And our topic this evening is the quality of this country's teacher education programs. Now, Secretary Duncan has talked in several venues, actually, about the push for statewide data systems. And he wants to, I think, would even extend that to the higher education environment and so on. If so, how would this all work? I mean, how would it actually be implemented?
That's something that that the research is still being done on that as to how that would actually work.
And again, we're talking about tracking students all the way through.
Right.
And this would be state by state, but they must feed into a federal database of some kind?
That would be one way to do it. That we really don't have a definitive idea about how it should be done. We're still looking at at some systems that are out there at a smaller level and how they are working and how effective they may be at the larger scale.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, certainly some people have raised some concerns about this, because anytime you're collecting data, what is the purpose for collecting the data? What are you going to do with it? And if I was running a teacher education program, I might be somewhat skeptical that the idea is to track all of this back to me and my program and hold me responsible for something I don't have any responsibility for, or that's the wrong way of putting it. I'm not the primary responsible agent here. There might be other social forces. There might be all kinds of things going on. Is that a legitimate concern on the part of folks who question the need to collect all this data?
I think that concern is always going to be out there. However, the goal of this data is to shine a light on what is going on, looking at where improvement is needed, and helping the person who is responsible for knowing that this is where improvement is needed, or maybe this is where things are really working.
So shine the happy light on it.
Yeah. Or if it is a problem, it's not supposed to be labeling somebody as being negative. It's supposed to say, okay, this is where you need to improve, but it's supposed to be a helpful tool to help, so that you know that that's where you need to improve.
Of course, there's always the danger that there can be too much emphasis on test scores and that kind of data, to judge the quality of any program, because it's one indicator, but not the total indicator. I think you'd agree with that.
Absolutely. I think you need really to look at a number of different things to make any really good decision about whether something is working or not.
Right. I wanted to ask you something we actually talked about before this program was prepared, but it's one thing that's bothered me for a long time. The Secretary is focusing clearly and sharply on the quality of our teacher education programs. But I wonder if the Secretary's time could not also be devoted to spending more time trying to enhance the image of teachers in our culture. I mean, when I look at the number of, again, I go back to my stats, which are admittedly dated, but a significant portion of those who go through teacher education programs and get certified never teach. And of those who do, a very significant number, I think it was close to 50%, don't stay in the profession for 5 years or more. So we've got a problem here in terms of that, but it's got two pieces to it from my point of view. One is the public perception of teachers, that they've got it easy, that they're paid well enough, and so on. And I think that's grossly unfair. But secondly, that every teacher should be paid the same. There's a kind of a democratic salary for teachers in the public school system that doesn't exist virtually any place else in the society. And so you talked earlier about the lack of adequate teachers in the STEM areas of science, technology, engineering, and math. Well, if an individual has a degree in math or engineering or any science, any natural science, their opportunities for earning money outside of education greatly outweigh the salary potentials within education. So why are we surprised that they don't want to go into education? So is it possible that the Secretary could be convinced that this is a tack that would also help improve the future of teacher education preparation in this country?
Well, first off, the Secretary is in total agreement with you that a main component of improving teacher quality is improving public perception of teachers and increasing respect for the profession as a whole. One of the initiatives that we're promoting, in fact, we're promoting through the Recovery Act, is the Teacher Incentive Fund grants, which basically those are grants that allow districts and states to develop performance pay programs.
Merit.
Exactly. So that would be one thing. In terms of what you're talking about, I think that's that's a great idea, and something that perhaps we'll be looking at in the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act.
Well, I think it's an issue that needs to be considered. It's a very difficult issue because we've got generations and generations of examples of where the systems have simply, leveled the playing field, no matter what your expertise is, and we're losing the people we need the most in some cases to get back into education. So I hope you'll take a hard look at that. I think the larger issue is, though, as you said, enhancing the image of a teacher in the culture. I mean, these are people we trust with the future of this country, our children and our children's children, and we really ought to be giving them the same level of respect that we give other professions that we desperately need as well. I mean, medicine, law enforcement, et cetera. So it just seems to me that the culture has to make a sea change here about how they view teachers. And I know you're in agreement, and the Secretary is as well. But I hope that he could use his bully pulpit to really focus on the salary issue, because I think teachers deserve to be paid for their expertise, and I think we need to look at that hard and long. He's often said this, and again, I went back and looked at his speech in Virginia that he gave also very recently, and he talks about a lot of the best and brightest are not going into teaching, but he doesn't really give us many explanations as to why, does he? Except it's not a prestigious profession from some people's point of view. Any other reasons beside the ones we've already cited? The dollars and cents, the level of public image of the teaching profession, but beyond that, are there other reasons?
I think those are really the main ones. I think it's, really looking at elevating respect for the profession and rewarding people in the same way that we do in professions that are also recruiting people with very similar skills.
We've done more to celebrate good teachers in recent years, but have we done enough? I guess would be another question. We have the golden apple, as you know, in this community as well as many other communities. But is that really enough we probably need to do more to bring attention to excellence in the classroom.
Absolutely, and that's something that I love about visits like the one today, because I got to speak with many of your College of Education faculty members.
And we're pleased to have you on campus.
I was pleased to speak with them, and they had some great suggestions, and that was one of them. And those are great ideas, particularly at this time as we're looking at the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Those are things that might be included in that or in other legislation. Just great, good ideas to consider. But policymakers don't necessarily know about them. We need people like you and people like your College of Education faculty members to provide that kind of feedback.
To bring it forward.
Right.
Now, according to the Secretary's calculation, about 1 million teachers are going to be retiring in the next 5 years. That's a stunning stat. 1/3 of the public school teachers will be retiring. And that has all kinds of implications, not the least of which is there'll be plenty of jobs out there for qualified teachers. But what kind of an impact is this likely to have on the entire educational system? Has this ever happened before, that there's been this kind of a retirement number?
I'm not sure if we've had this much within
5 years,
within such a short span of time. But yes, agreed. It's going to have a tremendous impact, and that is a major reason why teacher quality is such a huge focus for the administration right now, is because of those numbers.
Sure.
Because we are going to be bringing in a lot of new teachers, and it's imperative to all of us that these be very high quality people who are ready and raring to go when they get to the classroom, and have the right tools to be able to succeed and to help our children to succeed.
Yeah. There's another piece to this, though. I mean, hiring them is one thing, and training them to be good teachers is part of that process that leads up to their hiring. But one of my faculty colleagues here has been very critical of the professional development that we do or do not provide to young teachers in the field. Is the Secretary going to be addressing that as well, which is once you hire them, what do you do about continued professional development? I mean, every profession should have continued professional development, whether, whatever it might be, whether you're an electrician or whether you're a surgeon. You need continuing education in some capacity.
Absolutely. He's a strong advocate of that. One of the things that research shows us about why teacher education right now needs to change is that it's often stuck in the last century. And you know what? Even if we bring it up to 2009, things are going to change 10 years from now. It's imperative that teachers change with society and change at a good, timely pace in order to ensure that our students are really getting a relevant education. So that's definitely a strong focus. In fact, the department, both through regular grants and through Recovery Act grants, has awarded, I wish I had the number in front of me, billions of dollars in teacher quality partnerships for the professional development of teachers for partnerships that occur throughout the country between higher education and school districts. Sometimes businesses and nonprofits are also involved.
That's good to hear.
Yeah,
that's good to hear. That's very positive. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyway. You spent a day with us and getting to know more about our teacher education program here. Any surprises, any positives, any that you saw that you didn't know about us, or things that you thought were particularly noteworthy about our program?
Absolutely. Your College of Education faculty here are very passionate about what they do, and that's wonderful to see. And the one thing that really struck me about the program is how the practical experience in the classroom is interwoven throughout students' years, throughout their 4 years. It's not just
starts with the sophomore
year. Exactly. So that they're getting that at the same time that they're getting the theory, so that the theory makes sense. So that's a wonderful thing to see. There were also a few school administrators from the partner schools that were in our session earlier today. And they had positive things to say about the graduates that they're seeing from St. Norbert. So those are all good things to hear.
I think they are, and I think the faculty work very hard on developing these partnerships, and it really gives our students a kind of hands-on experience very early. And I think one of the keys, to teacher retention is to make sure that the ones we graduate as student teachers with certification that they really know what they're getting into. Yeah. It's kind of like shadowing the whole profession for 4 years. So when you do graduate, you know what you're entering, and you're prepared for it at least as best as you possibly can. But there's much more to be done, because that professional development, once they're out there, is really crucial. I have a daughter who is a professional educator, and I've watched her, over the years, develop, and what I think is she's a fine teacher at the 4th grade level and loves it. But she's had to have continued professional development to arrive at that level. And I think we owe it to our student teachers, and this is one of our challenges, I think, even for an undergraduate institution like ourselves, is to reach out and continue that development beyond the undergraduate degree of the teachers in the area, and get them continually involved in what's new in the field and what's new in the profession.
Absolutely. I mean, one of our goals for students is to make them lifelong learners, and certainly we want our teachers.
Why wouldn't the teachers be lifelong learners?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank our very special guest, Julie Ewart, for sharing her expertise with us this evening. Please join us for future programs as we continue our exploration of the world of ideas. Until then, I'm Michael Marsden for Conversations from St. Norbert College.